I think it is really important to like watch film on yourself. The importance of that dates back to some of the, my football career. By the time you get to college, everything is filmed for good or for bad, often for bad, right? But like practice in particular, every rep's on film, and every morning the next day, you're going to have to be accountable for whatever you put on film.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen AI Case Study Series. On this episode, we have on Ethan Dukes, who is the Director of Business Development at Convoke Systems. He joined the company back in 2019 and has a rich background in sales and business development. Before joining Convoke, Ethan held various positions at companies like Spotluck, Octopus Interactive, and Track Maven, and his educational background includes playing Division III college football at Hamilton College.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago now, but yeah, it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, no kidding. So I'm excited to have you on today because it looks like some of the work that you're doing kind of falls in line with some of the work that we're doing, and so I'm sure that there is some wisdom and experience there in what you're building that will be valuable to the viewers and for the white paper that we're building out here. Before we get into the weeds of things here, I'd love to get a quick little Cole's Notes version of how you became, how you came to find yourself in the role of Director of Business Development for Convoke.
Sure. So I found my way to Convoke by way of employee referral. It was a guy that I met, sort of a friend of a friend connection, nothing overly formal, but he and I, through hanging out at a couple different social gatherings, got into work talk. And the first time we discussed me potentially going over to Convoke, it was when I was relatively early on in that role that you mentioned earlier, Track Maven. And so I wasn't really in a position to move. And the position that my friend and referral had offered up was it was a different role. It's like a product specialist role, which is sort of more along the lines of customer success. And so, it wasn't a great fit. What the timing wasn't great at the time, but then we stayed in touch, and this director of business development role opened up. The position itself was pretty new by the time I found my way to it. They had tried with one other candidate before that lasted. It was sort of a 3-month experiment that didn't really work out with that gentleman. But the role itself is really handling the sales and marketing needs of a relatively small software company. So Convoke's a SaaS company of about 65 people, and the vast majority of that 65 are technical folks on the development and engineering front, with some system security folks and that team of product specialists that I mentioned before. So all of the business development work had been done by the CEO prior to my position existing. So when I got to it, it was a little bit immature in terms of what this role really needed to be. But the CEO just knew that the business had gotten to a point where he needed an additional set of hands to handle the in-person events, help out with marketing, bring some of the branding and digital presence of Convoke to a more modern point than it was when I got here. So yeah, it just ended up the timing took a little while to line up, but given my connection to the company, the person who referred me in, and what he was able to tell me about the team here, I knew it'd be a good spot for me.
It sounds like he kind of trusted you right out of the gate, which would imply to me that you probably have a secret set of unique skills that made you qualified for that position.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think one of the calling cards to everybody that I've worked with at Convoke is just people who are coachable and willing to work hard. I wouldn't say that I have a particular set of hard skills, but those are certainly words that I think have been used to describe me professionally. It's as I'm sure this project is probably a good example of your own belief in hard work and just trying to find a way to deliver value to people, and always have your ears open to what that could be, things you have to learn to fulfill that obligation. So that's something that I also value. So I think that was part of the deal, but a big part of my role is also just being able to pass what my CEO calls the airport test. So we all inevitably run into travel issues. especially these days, whether it's delays, canceled flights due to weather, or just the airlines screwing people over. All sorts of things can happen. So can you survive a 4-hour airport debacle with somebody? Was sort of one of the big tests that I had to pass being in this position. And I think my friend who referred me in figured that I could at least pass that one. So, so yeah, I think he took a bit of a flyer on me, seeing if it would be a good fit. And Convoke has a good, thorough interviewing process when onboarding new employees, and so if it wasn't going to be a good fit, I would have been weeded out through that process, I guess.
So a Hail Mary pass on somebody who seems to be able to handle stress and pressure very well. I'd say that's a great thing to put on the resume, Ethan.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I think maybe the other part of it that made me a somewhat attractive candidate for the position was, again, director of biz dev at Convoke was something that was still being defined, but would inevitably be a pretty broad role. And so when I started my career at Spotluck, I was the second employee there. It was a small marketing company where the co-founders had created this mobile app that gave people the ability to spin for discounts at local restaurants in areas around DC and other cities that we expanded to over the life of that company. And being the second hire there and sort of being foundational in the sales org there, I was given exposure to what traditionally is like a full sale, pre-sale to post-sale life cycle, where initially I was helping to prospect and scope out restaurants that we could sell our product to and that we wanted to join our community. And then I was eventually going out there, knocking on doors, pounding the pavement, developing relationships with gatekeepers and other people who can get me to the key decision maker, which is usually a general manager or owner, pitching those decision makers, closing a deal, sort of getting the contract in hand, helping to launch those restaurants and those communities, and then maintaining those accounts to fight churn over time. And so sort of that, I think, exposure to all of that and sort of the marketing side that backs up much of those sales activities. I think that sort of that general exposure and familiarity helped me to come into a role like this where there wasn't much infrastructure to start with on like how we wanted to do business development at Convoke.
I'm sure I speak for a lot of people when I say this. It's probably a very exciting experience to be able to define your own role in a company.
Yeah, I think it's sort of cuts both ways, right? On the one hand, you don't have bad processes or bad habits that you have to break. You can sort of come in and impose your will and maybe make decisions on tools or processes or hires that are up to you. I think all of that can be exciting, but for me, it's always been really important to listen to the advice of people who've been there before, and sort of if you have folks that you trust that have been down a similar path, learning some of their hard lessons the easy way is a good way to mitigate any challenges that you can face. But I think it's also healthy to have expectations that things will go wrong and you will make mistakes and you will make a decision that won't be the best at the time, and just figuring out how to problem solve from there and staying flexible and staying even keel as you can. It's not always going to be perfect if you're given a clean slate. You got to be ready for those mistakes.
So, Ethan, share with me maybe a notable event or two where you have used some of this wisdom and experience that you gathered at other positions to overcome some challenges in the new role that you were kind of carving out.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll give you a recent example. There's one of the best things that I was exposed to at Track Maven was I thought that they had a great sort of partnership and just general relationship between marketing and how marketing interacted with a cold outreach team that I was a part of, sort of SDRs, BDRs, and how those two teams also supported and were very closely tied to the sales team of like sales execs, which is sort of a hat that I wear now. Because there's a lot that from an infrastructure standpoint, whatever CRM or outreach tool you're using, whatever your tech stack looks like, if they're not able to work well together, then you're just inevitably going to be, you're going to have a leaky funnel. Because it really is this, if you think about sales, you can think about it as a big funnel. Marketing is trying to throw as much interest and as many leads in the top as you can. And then you're reliant on your outbound or inbound sales representatives, these SDRs and BDRs, to get enough engagement and identify the best opportunities for your sales execs to spend their time on and hopefully close deals and generate new business for you. And so at Track Maven, we had a sales ops support team that was really great at identifying good leads, good opportunities, the right stakeholders at the right companies. And all of that is sort of like fed into your CRM. And we were able to go in each week and we get a list of accounts and a list of folks to go after and be able to put them through our cold outreach cadence, which was, a combination of LinkedIn, email, calls, and even direct mail was a great strategy that we employed a lot over at Track Maven. And so having the open communication with marketing to let them know what kind of events or what kind of like special campaigns or creative campaigns they wanted to run and have us piggyback on top of that or like leverage it with our outreach, that was super useful. All the sales ops stuff to know that we had really good hygiene in Salesforce, which was the CRM we used, as well as how that linked to outreach, which was the, it's outreach software. I don't know what else to call it. The company's called Outreach as well. So how all of that interacted and then ultimately setting up those discovery calls for our sales reps to have them identify opportunities and try to pursue a contract. The synergies there were really powerful. And one of a gal that I worked with who led the sales ops team has since struck out on her own, is doing her own sales ops consulting work. And our Salesforce hygiene has some area for growth here at Convoke. And so I reached out to her last week. We met with her this week, and it looks like we're going to pursue an engagement with her to have her help out the team. So I'm not sure if that totally answered your question, but just in terms of how my experience is sort of continuing to matriculate towards progress here and how we can improve things at Convoke. I think maintaining those relationships and keeping note of who is good at really, at doing what things. You can maintain that Rolodex a little bit, even if it's just between your ears. There's always times where it might help you down the line.
I'm getting a sense that you have this gravity that helps you kind of glue together a combination of like the right team, the right people, the right training, as well as the right technologies and tools and things like that you need to cohesively achieve the desired outcome, which is obviously growth for the business that you're representing. Does that sound about right?
I think so. I think everybody likely comes to that in their own different way, right? You're just drawing on what your experience has taught you. And so, like you said, tools that you adopt, that's why it's so important from a sales standpoint. If you have a customer who ends up leaving and going to a different company who is not a customer, those sort of, those are low-hanging fruit from a sales perspective in a lot of ways, because you have someone who can be your internal champion somewhere, who knows how you work, knows the value of your offering and can help communicate that internally without the salesperson having to pitch everybody and anybody at a prospect organization. I think that, you end up falling back on what is familiar and what has worked for you in the past. And so I think you also have to offset that with, the fact that there's just so much that you aren't exposed to, and you have to remain open to getting exposed to new things. Like even though you thought using this set of tools or this established approach that I used in the past, like, I know that's getting to this ceiling. Maybe you don't realize that there is a higher ceiling out there if you change your approach or you change some of the elements that you use um, in the pursuit to whatever end you're pursuing. So I think, I think it's important to keep an awareness of what's always worked for you in the past, but you also have to keep an open mind, especially with the way technology and AI is transforming our workplace today. There's so much that I just don't know much about, or maybe just scraping the tip of the iceberg on. Um, and yeah, I mean, I remember I learned about one of those things today. I don't know if your note taker is the same as a note taker on a meeting I was on earlier this week, but like the AI generated summary of the meeting that I got from someone else's note taker was the best marketing for that tool that I've ever seen. I was like, if this is a reasonable cost, I want this, because it'd just be so much easier for me to forward this to people that I work with when they ask like, oh, how'd that call go? Like, here you go. Like, I don't even really have to summarize myself. I can fill in around the blanks and tell you like what might be, what might have more or less weight from this summary that AI was able to generate, but like, did a better job than I could do. So,
What's funny about all of that is that, yeah, at the end of this conversation, I'm going to get a score, and I'm going to have to like look at myself in the mirror and look at all um, the feedback and the mistakes, and then the what you can do to do better next time. And I think that that's very useful, because to your point, you don't know what you don't know. And so how does one go about figuring out, first of all, what you don't know, and then taking the new knowledge that you gain from the pursuit of trying to figure out what you don't know, and then implementing it in some kind of meaningful way in the work that you're doing, whether that be through a tool like this or something else? How do you approach that, I guess, abyss of information that's available that you just don't even know to look for?
yeah, it's hard. I think you learn to get better at it and be more efficient in where you look and what information you spend more time delving into as you learn your space more, right? So we have a couple relatively new hires who are on our team, or people who are still starting to understand our industry, understand our product. And I've been spending a lot of time with them, and it just reminds me of the fact that, now coming on almost 5 years ago when I first started at Convoke, um, for months, it felt like just a bunch of disparate data points, and it was hard to understand how they connect. Um, so it takes some time for you to sort of ramp to a level where you're looking at an industry newsletter and you understand which of the headlines you should be double clicking on to understand a little bit more, because you know that it's going to impact your business or impact your customers in a way you should be knowledgeable about. So I think that takes time, but to your point, I think it is really important to like watch film on yourself, and that kind of, the importance of that dates back to some of the, my football career, which was nothing special, but by the time you get to college, everything is filmed for good or for bad, often for bad, right? But like practice in particular, every rep's on film, and every morning the next day, you're going to have to be accountable for whatever you put on film. And so, getting comfortable with that and understanding that like the coaching and sort of the instruction that's going to come from what you put on tape, good or bad, is ultimately what's going to lead to progress. So if you deny it, if you're uncomfortable with it, if you reject it, you're just not going to get better. So that's fine. Some people get not complacent, but can be content with maybe where they sit at a certain time, at a certain point in life, and maybe they have other stuff going on they need to spend their energy on. That's all fine to be stagnant sometimes, but yeah, if you want to get better and if you want to learn from yourself, then you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, I suppose.
Right. Well, and there's this natural tendency for us to want to be comfortable. And I don't know if your experience is any similar to mine, but especially in the world of technology where it's constantly evolving. It feels like it's ever in motion. And just when you glue together the right stack of technologies, something new comes out and disrupts that whole thing. And so it's like, oh man, couldn't I just have 5 minutes with this thing that was working really well? And now I gotta redo everything and focus back on how we're going to merge this new thing, because it's almost essential to have whatever that new thing is. Because if you don't, like you said, the risk is that you fall, that you're falling behind, right? If you're not continually moving forward, you're either stagnant or you're moving backwards. So, talk to me about your current tech stack. What are you guys using in the way of technologies right now that's helping you with your marketing and sales processes?
Yeah, I think everything you said there is spot on, by the way. I think we all feel that frustration at times, but you have to be comfortable with the change, and you've got to be willing to go with it. Otherwise, else you get left behind. So
Mm.
from our technologies tech stack standpoint, I wouldn't say that we're overly sophisticated. We use Salesforce as a CRM to keep track of our customer and prospect communications. It's useful for us to be able to generate pipeline forecasting reports and things of that nature, so that when we're preparing for board meetings, which we have, it's 3-4 times a year, we're able to quantify a lot of our efforts in a useful way, and also look back and understand the opportunities in front of us and try to handicap what we can win over a quarterly or annual basis. We're actually, from an outreach standpoint, we use a relatively new platform I've been really impressed with called Ample Market. And so Ample Market's the kind of tool that has the data prospecting functionality where you can look up contacts that you're looking for at certain companies, and spend your credits on getting email addresses and phone numbers if you need them. So that way you can sort of hunt and peck that way. And then you can take contacts that you have in Ample Market or that are sort of synced over from Salesforce and put them into a sequence, an outreach sequence. So if there are folks that, for example, conferences and events are a big driver of business development for us. But inevitably, at the bigger ones, there are a fair amount of prospects that I just don't get in front of. But we usually sponsor these events to the point where we're able to get an attendance list before or after the event with contact information. And so working off that attendance list and homing in on the folks that I didn't get to see at that event, can put them into a sequence in Ample Market and run them through a thoughtfully spaced out outreach program where, maybe I'm starting with an email. I'm taking a look at their LinkedIn so that they get a notification that I was looking at their profile. Maybe we give them a call at some point. And then you can follow up with a second email that maybe includes a case study we think would be relevant for them, or another piece of marketing collateral. You send them a connection request on LinkedIn a couple of days after that. So you're able to space out and automate the way that you're reaching out to prospects. And some of the more interesting technology that they've worked into their product is, if I have a list of 40 people that I'm reaching out to after an event, like I just described, they make the way that they send out the emails, for example, they will subtly change some of the syntax, some of the word choice, where it carries the same meaning, but it's not the exact same carbon copy email going out to everybody on that 40-person list. And so they also have some nifty tools that warm up your inbox, so to speak. So it's sort of sending out almost dummy emails that are very plain text, that just add credibility to your outbound emails, even if they are to folks that you haven't had engagement with before, just because, particularly in our space, and we're guilty of this as well, spam filters are really overactive, and they're looking for any way to disqualify your email and sort of throw it in the junk folder. So Yeah, Ample Market's like a relatively new platform that we think has just been really thoughtful and well built out, and we've been happy with our experience with them so far.
Yeah, there's a catch 22 in the world where it's like on one hand, back to the point of you don't know what you don't know. I have solutions, or you have solutions that will help people solve problems they currently have. And there is a limited amount of ways that we can get that information in front of the right people. And then when you do that, it's got to be in a way that doesn't come off as if you are sending 100,000 generic emails to every single person in a list that you bought from somebody overseas. So
Mm-hmm.
the implementation of customizations and personalization is such a valuable tool to be using when it comes to AI technology and things like that. I'd love to get your perspective on the current state of things. What have you seen that is worth talking about? What have you seen that's kind of going in the wrong direction?
I think there's a lot going in the right direction when you think about AI in our space. So um, we work with financial institutions, big ones, and we work in the collections recovery space, which is very much on the back end of banking. And there's particularly in the US, more so than anywhere else in the world, there's a lot of regulations around it. And then the last 5, 10 years, things have really ramped up in that regard. And so as the regulatory landscape continues to evolve and change, a lot of those updates that come out of these regulatory bodies like the FDIC, the OCC, the CFPB, alphabet soup galore, it's not light reading much of the time. So to be able to throw some of these updates, some of these proclamations, some of these proposed rulings into a chat GPT or a similar tool and have it summarize it for you. And especially if you have it sort of finer tuned to what kinds of things are relevant to you and your business, it just makes it just takes your time commitment in trying to keep up with all of that stuff from hours to sometimes minutes, which can be really helpful. And obviously there are times when you shouldn't oversimplify things, but that's what we have lawyers for, right? So when you have to get into the fine print and whatnot, you leverage different resources, but just generally being able to stay abreast of big issues and being able to synthesize what's important and what's happening in the market. I think that's been a big one. In terms of, like I mentioned before, we have predominantly technical folks here at Convoke, developers and engineers who are writing code, designing tools, executing on requirements we gather from our customers based on what they need. For really repeatable processes, like we're very careful about it, and we keep an open line of communication with our customers on where they're comfortable with us doing these sorts of things. But AI can help to cut down, again, the manual time on doing certain kinds of coding tasks, certain kinds of tasks generally, that otherwise just like take man hours and take key punching to get done. So the ways where we can utilize tools that are AI AI related, just to make sure that we're giving our employees, our teammates, more time to actually leverage their expertise instead of just slogging through manual work that more junior people could be doing. We see that as an added bonus. We just want to make sure that of the human resources that we have, and we have some great talent on our team, we just want them to be leveraging some of the higher skills and higher experience that they have to offer.
Yep, that makes sense. You've been very generous with your time here, Ethan, and I can't tell you how you underpromised at the top of the show, and you definitely over-delivered. The insights that you provided have been very useful, very valuable, especially for us and for anybody that's watching this. I'd love to kind of leave the episode on a high note here. If there was a single piece of advice that you could offer anybody that's in a similar position to you, that's kind of wading through the weeds right now, in the way of, solving marketing problems and leveraging technology, what would that piece of advice be?
It's a good question. I think so many of the good people that we've brought on board lately, or the good services or tools that we have adopted most recently, have just been based off recommendations of people that we know and trust. So I guess like my recommendation would be, where you can, don't feel as though you have to reinvent the wheel. If something works well for somebody that you trust, maybe with a similar use case or similar business to your own, don't be afraid to give it a try. Like most organizations and tools and people out there, there's some way for you to get a sample of what they could produce for you with before committing to a year-long, multi-year contract or something like that. So yeah, I would just recommend, like, don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel every time. Be active with your networking. Be intentional about staying in touch with folks. You never know where they're going to land, and you never know what kind of nugget of wisdom or help they may be to you down the road. So that, yeah, I guess that would be my advice.
Sound advice, Ethan. Thank you for that. If anybody wanted to reach out to you to get in touch with you, maybe to pick your brain or work with you in Convoke, how would one go about doing that?
We're very accessible through our website, convokesystems.com. All of those communications ultimately get funneled to me, whether you request a demo or want to work for us or whatever. So anything on there is fine. And then I can provide my contact information to you, Devin, and wherever you end up hosting this conversation, or if some of the stuff gets into the white paper, then I'm happy to be available through there as well.
Wonderful. We'll link to appropriate contact channels in the show notes. Otherwise, you've been wonderful, and you've shared a lot. Thank you for that. If you want to get in touch with me and my team, it's nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and I will see you in the next one.